Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. This podcast is of course free, but to ensure it continues, it does require your support. If you can support the show and its continued research, there are a number of tiers to choose from at patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. We have a Discord private discussion group and a monthly live chat, plus regular personal updates behind the scenes. With your support, I hope to dedicate more time to this research and producing fortnightly episodes. Alternatively, you can really help support by subscribing, rating and sharing your favourite episodes with your friends. Thanks. Hello again, I hope you're all well and beginning to be able to enjoy some freedoms again wherever you are. The pace of life is starting to speed up again, but my focus on learning about these other worlds continues to intensify, and I personally find that in doing so my life feels ever more meaningful. I hope these stories bring you a sense of meaning also. Thanks for your messages. I'm meeting lots of really interesting people online and enjoying great chats, sharing experiences and feeling a sense of connection, something that is really important for everyone right now. Please get in touch and tell me how you're doing and your own thoughts about these stories, or if you'd like to share your own story. Thank you to my curious crew on Patreon for all their support. I couldn't do any of this without you, and I hope that you enjoyed the last bonus episode about Black Dog folklore. Another one on the way soon. Thank you, listeners, for all your wonderful messages of support and sharing your own encounters. I really love receiving your emails, so please keep them coming. You can contact me at scarletofthefae.com and tweet me at _remain_curious. All of these episodes are very special, as heartfelt shares from our guests. But this episode seems particularly important to share. It involves excerpts from a personal collection of encounters and dreams made by a young man from the age of 11 to his late teens. His father had encouraged him to journal these experiences, and he also made drawings of some of the events. It's rare that a child or young person is encouraged to explore these realities with such depth by a parent, and for that reason I feel that the collection, known as the B.O.D.A.Vs, the Books of Dreams and Visions, and for that reason I feel the collection is rare and of great importance to helping us understand our nature of being as humans, and I believe that these states of deeper perception with nature are innate within us and socialized out of us from a young age. Our guest, now in his mid-20s and undertaking a biological science master's, was able to spend lockdown reunited with his father, and this gave him the chance to reread these collections, and he was able to attempt to categorize some of the beings and events that took place. I hope you enjoy this episode. Time to renovate.
So basically I had one or two experiences of seeing different fairy-like creatures when I was a child. But it was first around when I was 11. My father he liked to go for walks in the local forest at night.
Oh, nice.
So when I was 11, I asked if I could come with, and then I could. My mum wasn't that happy about it, but she got convinced anyway. Somehow, I don't actually know how. And then just began seeing all these different figures, and my father recorded them because he found that extraordinarily interesting. And then after that, we did that a few times again.
Sorry, did you say that, because you broke up a little bit, did you say that, so you saw them and your father suggested that you record those experiences?
Yeah, I narrated them, and then my father, he wrote them down what I was saying. Also, drawings of them in a book I made myself at the time.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, they're a bit primitive, of course, but they showed the areas quite nicely and the different features. And then I kind of gave them different names. Like some of us, I saw these figures that were like little men with sticks and robes and pointy hats. I called them dwarves, for example. Some other figures which were like some shiny red and green creatures, which I called them elves, so forth.
What was your experience of what it was like to see them? So you're walking along in the forest. What sort of time of night would it have been?
Well, I don't think it wasn't too late. So it was still before my bedtime. But it was I guess right after sunset. This was I think it was just in the first days of January. I've written down somewhere the exact dates, but it was the first days of January, and then we went out there, and so there was I think a full moon, so it was relatively easy to see. And yeah, then I just began seeing different things.
And where would they come from? How did they manifest to you?
Well, it kind of varied actually. We counted, and there was, I think we counted that there were like 13 instances that night of things I saw.
Wow.
So some of them I just sort of saw moving along a bit like if you would have seen a person walking around, just they were like less solid, if that makes sense, and shining a bit. Others of them sort of just appeared in a space, and then they would disappear when I got closer.
Right.
Others would sort of materialize out of trees or stumps.
Yeah.
And then go sort of glide back in again when I got close. I didn't try and communicate with anything at that night, but I did kind of try that later. But yeah, that wasn't that successful, but did come some interesting things out of it.
Yeah. What happened when you tried later to commune with them?
Well, then they would usually either they would actually change their shape to something else, or they would like send out some kind of other figure, which would then be some kind of answer.
Some kind of
which didn't always make sense to me at the time at all, but sometimes it was quite obvious.
Some kind of answer, right? Okay, yeah. And how did you go about communing with them in those later times? Healing has helped me many times in my life when I'd reached a point where something needed to change. In 2005, I trained with Martin Brofman to learn the body mirror system of healing, which was life-changing for me. It's based on the idea that the parts of your body that don't work well reflect the parts of your life that don't work well, and about which you have tension in your consciousness. The understanding is that tension is stress, and stress causes symptoms. In a distance healing or in-person session, I move up the chakras, returning each one to wholeness using a colour map. During the process, I see images and situations, I hear words or receive impressions that tell me something about what caused the tension in that person's life. The feedback at the end of the session is a really big part of the healing. If you're interested in a chakra healing session, you can contact me at scarletofthefae@gmail.com.
Well, I would kind of try and send my thoughts to them, basically.
Yeah. So telepathically.
Yeah, telepathically.
And how old would you have been at that age?
As far as we see, the first time I did it was actually, I tried to do it was shortly after, a few months. So it would have been 12.
Yeah.
But that wasn't that successful. That was actually an instance where I was just before I was going to school. I was sitting in the couch looking out the window. Then I could see this quite clear elf-like creature, which had looked human, but had a very big head and didn't actually have any face. And then I tried to kind of look like she was riding on something. Then I tried to sort of communicate to her to say, "Hello, who are you?" And then I could see that when I did that, her head began moving around as if she was looking for like the source of the sound.
Oh, amazing! Yeah.
But I couldn't. But she didn't seem to actually really understand what I was saying.
Did you get eye contact with any of them?
Yeah, sometimes I had experiences where they, again, it was very different. Sometimes they didn't seem aware that I was there at all. Sometimes they briefly became aware of me being there, and then they would disappear, or otherwise try and make contact themselves, or even actually sometimes act in like a threatening way, actually.
Oh gosh, tell us about that.
Well, sometimes they could like manifest different kinds of weapons. Often like old-fashioned bows or crossbows or swords. And then they might point them towards you, try and fire an arrow, but they would always disappear before it reached me, usually.
Usually. So there was some kind of impact on some level on one or two of your experiences. So what happened in that instance when there was some kind of perceived impact from a weapon?
Well, that would feel like basically a bit of an irritation.
Did they aim for a certain part of your body?
Well, some of them actually aim for my eyes.
Oh, interesting. So that was what you were viewing.
Yeah.
You were using to communicate with them, and they were shooting that straight to that source of contact with them, as it were.
Yeah, the specific story of that actually, where there was there was this special beech tree in the forest that's sadly been cut down now, but we often, when I visited that, we had a lot of experiences. And then from out of the roots, there were like these hollows down in the roots, and out of one of those hollows there came these three like armed fairies, if that makes sense, or gnomes. They were very small, but they had like armor on and these like big Roman style shields, and then they had these spears they threw in my eyes. And then I kind of told them with that didn't mean any harm, and then they actually stopped and still pointed those spears at me, and then just gradually retreated back in.
Oh, how big were they?
Yeah, well, how big were they? Not that big. 30 centimeters at the most, I think.
And were they male fairies?
Yeah, they're different. Those definitely look masculine.
Yeah.
Yeah, those usually clear that some of them look masculine and some of them looked feminine, but
It's interesting to note that you were approaching a beech tree, and it is a shame they cut it down. Do you know why they cut it down?
No, I don't know actually. It's kind of, they did it shortly before I kind of stopped seeing things actually. So yeah, that's we done others. There was like so in this forest, which is near here, which is it used to be a royal residence.
Right.
So there was like the castle in the middle of this park, and then around in the park there's this forest. And then they had like this big they have these two hills, and on each side of the hills there was like these big old beech trees growing. And then at some point they just cut down all the beech trees on one side of the hill.
Oh.
Which yeah, that's a bit strange, but that happened.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you describe any other encounters?
yeah, definitely. I did have some experiences actually of some fairies moving around in rings, or fairies or elves or what they were, because of course the elves in Scandinavia, but moving around like in these circular formations in the
Right.
forest.
Yes. What was that
Some
like?
of the earlier ones.
The earlier ones. How big were they? Can you remember what they looked like at all?
Well, they were like short, but they were like they were silvery. I guess a bit same color like moonlight, like dull moonlight. And then they were kind of moving around quite slowly in a circle in the middle of the field in front of the castle.
Wow.
Yeah, that was what they're doing, and it's
how many of them?
Not it's one of the early visions, so there were a lot, 30, 50 maybe. Even.
Wow. And how tall?
So it was a big circle. Yeah, they were not particularly tall though. Half a meter. I guess, yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting.
There were one with like these gnome like figures in the same forest, from a different location though, where that was a male looking gnome and a female looking one, kind of appeared from out of the underbrush in the forest, and it was quite weird because that area where they came from was as if there was this light surrounding it. So they were quite clear. And then suddenly from where they stand, this really small gnome like guy, he comes running, and he has a scroll, something that looks like an old-fashioned scroll. And then he comes, and then just before he gets over to me, he sort of trips, and then he falls down into the ground. And then after that, the two gnomes, they kind of retreat back into the forest.
And did they see you on that occasion? Did they kind of acknowledge
they were looking right at me.
Right. What kind of sense did you get from them? Was it friendly or otherwise?
Yeah, those two, they seemed like they were friendly or curious.
And did you laugh when he fell?
Well, I don't actually remember if I laughed, but I definitely could have.
It's bringing up humor. That just the memory for you is bringing up that humor again. So
yeah,
it's fun. It's almost like because I'm imagining were you still a child at that point? Were you still quite young? So it's almost like an entertainment in some way.
Yeah, I was a teenager at that point. But yeah, I was, probably 13, I think, 14 at the most. Again, I've got that written down somewhere, so I can look that up. But I think that might actually have been the same. The same night I had another experience with some of what were described as probably the more weird creatures in that forest. Because there were also these creatures that they look basically like giant spiders. And they would kind of walk around in these big packs.
Oh God, that is terrifying. I've just got a shiver down my spine thinking of that. How big were they?
Well, the smaller ones, they were like dog-sized.
Dog-sized. Why does that sound familiar to me? Can you carry on?
It's like Lord of the Rings, basically, or
okay. It's from my own nightmares.
But then they and some of them were like horse-sized, some of the bigger ones, but they were quite transparent as well. They weren't that solid looking, so that was that made it less terrifying. Fortunately, I'm not frightened of spiders myself, so that wasn't a problem either. Otherwise, it would have been probably quite
that
quite
would
terrifying.
be. I'm not sure how I would deal with that, I have to say. I think.
But they were quite common at times in the forest. And at some point, they kind of they couldn't. There was as if that they couldn't get within like 3 meters of me without getting meeting some kind of barrier.
Interesting. Did you ever prepare when you were going out? So I know you were with your dad for these walks, and were they usually at the same time of day, maybe like twilight, just after sunset?
Yeah.
Did he ever prepare before you went that you know of? Did he ever kind of sort of work with any kind of protection measures?
No, not really. No, there was. Don't think he structured like that. No.
So how do you explain how did you at the time? Was that protection barrier, do you think that came from your own intention, your own natural intention, or something else? How did you kind of make sense of it yourself, or didn't you? Perhaps you didn't make sense of it.
Ended with by the moonlight. I think that was my original explanation, the moonlight. But yeah, don't totally know if that actually makes sense now. But that was the way I explained it then.
That they couldn't step into the moonlight.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're talking about with those is more kind of shadowy, around the edge type entities. Yeah.
Yes, they were. But at some point, they actually also kind of tried to communicate with me. I think around one of the last times I actually saw them, they what they did was they when they couldn't get close, they manifested this stag beetle, which flew over towards me, and then it turned into a book.
A book?
Yeah. I still don't know what they meant about that, but that was quite interesting. That it showed that they actually had some kind of mind greater than I expected those particular creatures to have.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if you came across a very important book in your life at some point at that time, shortly afterwards, or
not that I recall. But again, if I did, I probably would have written that down as well.
But had you started journaling at that point?
Yeah.
You had.
Yes, the journals were quite along at that point. I have them here, so I think I could kind of find it.
It's so great that your dad encouraged you to do that, to write all of this down, because you're so open as a child and a young person, and it's only if somebody tells you, oh no, that's just your imagination, like, kind of shut it down, this is separate to yourself, shut it down, this is not reality, shut it down.
Yeah.
We're not told that, and we're allowed to actually explore this. This is the effect.
Yeah, it's quite rare.
Yeah, great dad. Good work, Dad. So did he, what was his experience also while this was happening? Did he ever perceive any of these himself, or was he just holding a space, as it were, for you to experience?
Very, very rarely, I think he experienced. I think there's only one story where I can recall he actually saw something. Yeah, I think I've asked him that actually. What he usually says is that he could sometimes see like blurry shapes around in the forest, but never anything as detailed as what I saw.
Yeah.
So, but there was one instance of like where he said that he saw a dark figure running really fast over the lawn, and then he said that it had gone behind it a particular chestnut tree in the forest, and then I could actually, when I looked at that, I could see this figure kind of sticking its head out, this black gnome-like figure sticking its head out, and acting a bit strange towards us actually. Sometimes it was welcoming, and sometimes it was threatening.
I wonder if that was because it was you there and your father, I wonder if there was a sense of openness to yourself and feeling a threat from an adult human? I don't know. I'm just kind of...
Maybe, yeah. My other idea was there might have actually been two there. Just but it was
this is
a bit
interesting.
hard to make out.
Yeah.
But I think that one I had a lot. I actually saw that particular entity a few times in the walks.
And did your relationship change over time, or did it just always stay the same?
No, it's definitely, as regards to the forest walks, it was definitely a sense of that the more time it went, the more like dark and hostile the place actually became.
Oh, really? That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you would think that the familiarity would sort of, bring you closer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
or them closer. Yeah.
But it was also, and I'm not so sure if that had anything to do with me or if that was the forest, because it was kind of as if at some point they kind of began fighting each other.
Right.
Within the forest.
The beings in the forest.
Yeah. So I don't know if that had anything to do with me or if it was just a coincidence that that kind of period in their own history that I was witnessing. That's of course more or less impossible to know for sure.
So you just have your journals there. Were you looking for something before that you wanted to share?
I was just looking at exactly when that gnome experience was.
Okay. So this is from, I think it was late 2006 to 2013 that you kept the journals.
Yes.
And brilliant that you got those drawings down right then. It's so great to just get it down there and then. I know it's they're kind of rough drawings, but it gets the sense of it down, and it just really helps to draw you back into that moment years later when you flick through these drawings and journals. So, a bit like dream journaling, really, isn't it? It can...
Yeah. That's also, again, those journals were a combination of dream journaling and vision journaling.
Yeah. So what happened with your dreams during this period? Did you have some kind of journey with that too?
Oh yeah, definitely. As a thing I wrote to you as well, it's that was probably the period in my life where I had the most vivid dreams. Quite remarkable, actually. I was able to remember dreams in quite a lot of detail in those days, and a lot of them had these kind of magical themes as well. Sometimes connected with stuff happening in the forest, and sometimes it was also so often they seemed almost allegorical.
Yes.
Also, what was a bit interesting with them was they often seemed like connected to each other, some of them.
Connected to each other, right? Yeah, some epics.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Did you receive answers in any of them?
Yeah, they could definitely be interpreted like that. I think one of the earliest dreams I had was actually about going to the forest, where I met this woodcutter, and then my father said that he was a being called Milk Lily, who was the lord of the forest. And then later I had dreams where he had died, and then his children had kind of his children were having a war against each other.
Was this around the time of the when they chopped the trees down? Do you think, does it tie into that at all?
No, those far before then, actually, but they did continue into that time.
Okay.
But they were. Yeah.
And did that dream of the woodcutter and his children sort of fighting each other, did that precede what you later witnessed with the beings fighting each other?
Yeah.
So it was quite how long before do you think it was?
Let's see, it's in this journal. So that dream I've actually got here. That was the Monday, the 26th of November, I think it is. The dates are not always that clear.
In 2006?
It would have been in 2007.
Ah, yeah.
Yes.
So this is quite,
That would have been
quite
2007.
early.
Yeah. Let's see the first. Let's see if I can find the first instance of battle in the forest that is actually afterwards.
I would love to hear some, but not if it feels too personal.
Let's see. Yeah, so I think it kind of starts April 2008, the first one where it's really bad. It seems happens. Yeah. But yeah, I think interesting ones here actually.
You would have been about 14 here, right?
In 2008. Oh, I guess I would. Yeah, would have been 13. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Would have been, yeah. 2007. I would have been 12. Yeah. This was one of the dreams. I think this was actually the moonwalk that preceded the dream with the forest lords children fighting each other by about a month. That was the last one I had before I had that dream. That's an interesting one.
Yes, that sounds great.
We went to the forest with a torch, a Halloween ceramic pumpkin lantern for protection. So the date of this is the 31st of October. So this is the Halloween moonwalk. And some biscuits for an offering to the elves at the fairy place. So the fairy place was a special oak grove in the forest, which is where this all takes place actually. Or oak grove. Arrived around 7:30. When we got there, there was some strange red light over the forest. In the forest, there was just a glow, lighting things up a bit, so we could see the shapes of everything pretty clearly. There was no moon visible. Before I went into the forest, I saw that up in the trees, there were these strange shapes. They were very large, about 10 meters high, with bushy faces, some of them. Others looked a bit dried-like. It's possible they could be ents like Treebeard in Lord of the Rings. Then when we came over to the big grass field, there were these whitish glowing figures all over the fields, all transparent, as were the tree spirit, or ents. There were 3 glowing figures on the path in front of us, leading to the forest entrance, but they vanished when we got about half a meter from them. Perhaps they were trying to test us or frighten us away. When we got to the fairy place, my dad mentioned how there was a glow around everything, and I said that even though the Norns cover their well every night, some light still comes out of it. So at that point, I was very interested in Norse mythology. That's why that note is there. And that could also be what we're seeing. I also saw there were lots of elves about, but I couldn't distinguish them clearly. My dad said there were lots more on the full moon night a few nights before. So he had gone a few nights before on a walk by himself. Friday, October the 26th. Note, full moon night before Halloween is very powerful as regards fairy activity. That's a note my father made there. Then we went and gave an offering of biscuits and asked the elves to accept them. And we sang 3 verses of Galadriel, for the Otherworlds of your well, which is a poem we found in The Lord of the Rings. After meditating on the forest for a minute or two, we went for a walk deep into the forest along the main track. And then I saw in the distance a skeleton with a Grim Reaper sickle and radiating dark energies. He had a big screen face and mouth, and out of his black energies came other smaller skeleton men. Then when we came closer, he vanished. In his place I saw an elfish-looking king with a crown about 4 meters high. He had grey clothes. Next to him was 2 others, an elf woman and man kissing and dancing, also very large. When we came closer, they vanished, of course. Then we heard a very old-fashioned mobile ring, and it was my mum telling us to go back and meet her at the grass lawn. But we went to the fairy place again. Yeah, she sometimes got nervous about me being out at night.
Yeah, she has like a second sense, right? What's going on? I can feel something's going on. I'm going to give them a call.
Yeah, exactly. But we went to the fairy place again, and I saw this shining figure behind a tree. But when he saw I'd noticed him, he hid himself by changing himself into silver leaves. Then seeing I discovered that, he changed back and ran away. Then as we were leaving the forest to meet my mum, I felt as if the elves, etc., were trying to pull me back. They were all over me, pressing me, and I was sucking them into my mouth, which made it hard to breathe.
Oh.
It was very uncomfortable. I felt my mouth was filled with them, and they had a very strange taste. Joke. Have you ever had elf meat? It doesn't taste very good, but they did insist.
Was it meat? Did you say they're putting meat into your mouth?
No, they're kind of putting their own. There was.
Oh, they
like
were
the
reaching into your
spirits,
mouth.
They were kind of filling up into my mouth and into my lungs, which was a bit of a weird feeling. So that's why, yeah. So that's why I called elf meat. Of course, it's not meat. It's some kind of subtle bodies they have. As we left the forest to meet Mum, I hung back for a minute and I saw a big elf human size with a pram, and then the pram shape shifted into a mattress with red, green, and blue on it, and the elf was lying on it with a soda glass in his hand, a straw. Then we went home.
Wow. It's just so amazing that you wrote all this down at the time. It must be a real source of wonderment, for you to have that now, to have it forever. And also really something that you shared with your dad, which is just so rare, actually. I mean, it's just so rare to be able to share these kind of experiences with close members of your family like that. It's amazing. The big, tall, did you say the Elf King was about 4 meters high?
Yeah.
So probably
again, that was my measurements from when I was when I was 12. So that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, I think. But
okay.
But yeah, he was very tall.
He was huge, right? Did you get a sense from him at all towards you, or not really?
No. He was kind of he was holding like those royal apples. The balls with the cross on.
Oh yeah.
And kind of just staring at that.
What color were they? The sort of orbs that he was holding.
Well, again, he was mainly transparent with a mixture of grey and brown colors.
And then you said that there were. Did you say there were 2 human-sized, a man and a woman, dancing in front of him?
They were kind of behind him, so they would have been around the same size as him, but they looked a bit smaller.
And what did they look like?
I can't remember it, but they looked human-like, but a bit undetailed, if that makes sense.
And were they clothed?
Yeah.
Can you? I'm not sure whether you could remember what kind of clothes they were wearing.
Well, I have drawn them, so I could.
Fab.
See it there.
Oh, it'd be lovely to see some of these pictures as well. I only ever drew one entity that I saw, and I really wish I'd
I'd like
journaled.
I'd also. I've considered I should scan them at some point. That could be good. But so basically he has like a robe on, the king, and a crown, and they are, seems like that they're wearing pretty common clothes. It seems like one of them has a cape, maybe. The male, I think.
Thank you very much. That's great. And did you say that that was preceding the later dream that you then had?
Yeah, that was about a month before, a bit less, and that was the last walk in the forest I had. But of course, there were a few visions between, because I also had quite a few in my room actually, before I went to sleep, which could be a bit distracting.
Did you know that was going to be your last walk there?
Well, it wasn't the last one, but it was the last one before the dream, so I didn't know that.
It was the last one before the dream. Okay. And so are you able to tell us what happened in the dream?
Yeah, I can read that for you too.
Thank you.
Let's see. There it is. Yes. Monday, 26th of November morning. In the dream, me and Daddy were in the forest. The king of the forest had just died, and his son had just taken over. His son was the serpent. He looked just like the one the dwarves were shooting at. So, okay, actually, that's there was a previous vision where I had these recurring characters on my cupboard, which were these three dwarves who sat there almost every night.
In your bedroom?
And then one night there was this, in my bedroom. And one night there was this serpent-like creature that came through the wall up on the cupboard, and where the dwarves were. And when they saw one of them, he took up a bow and began shooting it, so it left. But that same figure occurs in this dream. So he looked just like the one the dwarves were shooting at. In the forest, we met the king of the forest daughter. She had blonde hair, light skin, green and brown suit, and reached up to my neck. Tristan's about 150 centimeters at the time. Then she walked us around in the forest, and suddenly we came to the snake's kingdom. Not far from the oak grove, where the snake lived. There was no leaves, only dead trees. Then when I looked over at the snake, he was curled up and hissing. Then I turned around and looked at the forest king's daughter, and everything became blurrish, like I was losing my eyesight. Then I came out of the forest. It was good again. In the dream, we were overnighting at the blue boxes. So the blue boxes, they were like this temporary housing we lived in while our flats were being renovated by the council.
Okay.
Everything had been moved except for my bed, the mirror, and the couch. So the mirror was a mirror I had in my room, which also actually a few figures appeared within. It was night, and I noticed everything becoming dark, and I thought, oh no, I'm losing my night vision. I began running through the boxes. There was an elf sitting on the couch. I ran back into the room and begged the mirror, please, I beg you, give me my night vision back. Then everything became normal again. Now in the dream, I could see everything in clear colors, even though it was night. Then I began to think about the snake and the forest king's daughter, and why the snake had taken away my night vision. So that was that dream. There's a bit more, but that's not relevant. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, the obvious thought, I guess, is that fear of losing the ability to see these things. I guess that's probably what you thought too.
Yeah, I did. Especially in the dream, it seems.
And did you ever talk to anyone apart from your dad about these things? Because I'm just wondering if there was awareness of that this isn't usually something that people experience, and they have nothing to compare that to, and therefore if you try and talk to most people about it, they're just kind of like, don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't talk to other people about it because I kind of felt they wouldn't understand it.
Yeah. And so with your dad, do you know what was his source of interest in these things in the first place?
I think the 70s.
It's the 70s. He's having a wild time in the 70s. Experimenting with psychedelics and...
No, not really. Just mainly a bit. I think what he says he was mainly experimenting with was different kind of poisonous flowers, which was the closest he got to it.
Right.
But otherwise he was into a lot into astral projection and stuff like that. He liked doing that.
Yeah. Well, it's another means. I mean, we don't need psychedelics to experience these things.
No.
We can do it through meditation and experimenting with like lucid dreaming and astral projection.
Yes, so I think that's probably safe also in the long run.
It is, yeah, something you can build upon that you it's just, like you say, it's definitely safer. And so how did he kind of support your experiences? I love the way when you were there was a note in what you were just reading there where it said is 150 centimeters tall. Was that one of your dad's notes? I love that. So he's kind of thinking of future reading back, and as an adult he knew how important this source would be. So how does he feel about the fact that, you know, you've got these journals now? Do you still have this strong link together to these supernatural interests?
Oh yes, especially, yeah, definitely. It's I'm actually currently at his place. Well, he's at work now, but I'm over at his place because that's where the journals are. So yeah, so I went over to visit to be in the environment where it all happened, basically.
Have you been going out there again?
No, I haven't been in the forest for Moonwell for a long time. Not at all. I think we can. Yeah, I can. Again, the last times I was there, as far as the journals record, didn't happen that much. I can try and read one of the last times. I think after the tree was cut down, I didn't actually really do it that much anymore. Especially I was a bit sad about that.
Yeah,
my father was completely crushed about it. He had a very, very special relationship to that beech tree.
Did he ever try and find out why on earth that decision was taken?
No, not really. No, that's it's hard to say. Again, the castle got kind of sold as a conference to be a conference center a bit later. So I don't know if it has something to do with that.
I mean, it's just about people's values, isn't it? And it sounds as if somebody trying to sort of neaten these woods, or, you know, bring more light in for the conference center, and just not a thought for the landscape and the place that as an entity in itself, you know, as a living entity in itself that deserves respect. I just don't understand. Anyway,
it was a very historical place too, in that whole park. So, but after that, it was, I don't know, there was kind of a feeling also when we went there that the magic was kind of gone. At least from large parts of the forest. So it didn't really, it didn't really do it. And again, my father was very sad about it. So in a lot of ways, it kind of also made it less cozy to go with him, because he'd just be sad.
Of course.
Or angry.
Yeah, I totally get that. And for your times as well, for your, you know, you shared these precious times together, these adventures together, and it's just it's just a real blow, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely was. But yeah, the journals are still there, so the story exists.
Yes.
Which is good. But yeah, it's largely due to the lockdown that I've begun looking at these journals again. Otherwise, I wouldn't say I'd forgotten about it, but I kind of left it a bit behind. It was that was my past, and I was trying to get my future going. I'm doing a master's thesis in as a biologist now, but that could the old lockdown thing made that a tad bit hard, because I couldn't really get into the university.
Right.
So looking at these journals again and making and analyzing them became a bit of a side project.
Yeah.
And I've made quite a lot of analyses of them, commentaries as I call them, with thoughts I've had, but I'm far from done. I think I'm only halfway through the second out of 5.
At the time when you were having these experiences, what did you think, if anything, was behind it? How were you making sense of it?
Well, again, in those days, I firmly believed that was simply an other world reaching out and contacting me, or maybe even that I had some kind of second sight. That was my firm belief.
Yeah.
Which of course today I still consider that a very, very clear possibility that
Yes.
was all was. It definitely wasn't something I made up, and I'm not insane either. So
Absolutely. I think, anybody that has these experiences, we're constantly, saying we're not mad. We weren't drinking. We hadn't taken drugs. It's just having to defend these real experiences. They are real. We saw, we experienced, we felt. And because the world isn't ready for this, we're just kind of defending our experiences against what is perceived as, normal reality. But no, I agree. What did you think the fairies were at that point? Did you think they were fairies, or did you kind of perceive them as something different?
Well, some of them are. Some of them I considered fairies. Again, I don't think I didn't use the word fairy about them. Some of them look like very much like traditional fairies, so them are called fairies. The others are called elves. The ones that were bigger, and the ones that the others are, some of them are called dwarves, some are called gnomes, and others I would use like the Danish names for like Nisse, which is like a Danish brownie. It looks a lot like an English garden gnome. But some of them I would call dryads as well. It was very I tried to make some systems for like categorizing them, which weren't very successful, but it was like an attempt.
It's part of your exploration of your experiences. Yeah.
And now when I've done the commentaries and I've commented on visions, I've often also made commentaries on the different categories I used in those days, and basically assess their strengths and weaknesses.
So maybe that's your biological academia skills coming in there as well in terms of categorizing. Does it bring back feelings for you when you, or it must do because you shared this with your father, but when you read through them, does it bring back the emotional senses that you experienced at the time?
Yes, some of them definitely do. That's for sure. Again, it's hard to say what emotions I had in those days, because it was so real to me that it was just like going out and viewing stuff that was happening. I was, even the first time I saw it, I wasn't even that surprised. It was amazing, but it was like I kind of expected that was what's going to happen when I went out in the forest, I think, even if not consciously.
People do speak of that, the kind of not when it actually happens, not being surprised.
I'd of course, as a kid, I was very much into various kind of fantasy, pop fiction, so I could relate something to that. These stories, the Spiderwick Chronicles, which were very big when I was a child, which were about that, and I related a lot to that.
Can you ever remember when you were a child, experiencing, or young person experiencing these? Can you remember whether you got any physical sensations in your body when you were viewing them?
Well, that depends. If some of them were somehow able to touch me, I did. Like the incident with the spear throwing fairies that I described. They again had the sensation of being hit in the eye.
Yeah. Did they go for your actual eyes or your third eye?
My actual eyes.
Actual eyes, yeah. I mean, there's lots of folklore around that.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So you're aware of it with, people going blind afterwards, or
the fairies fairies asking, which eye can you see me with, and then plucking it out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read about them.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there. Thanks so much. It's really fantastic to speak to you. I really enjoyed speaking to you. I'm sure I'm going to think of some other questions now when I go away, because I'm going to be thinking about this. And as you're telling it, I can see it all as well. I'm kind of there in this forest, and I used to frequent this forest with a group of people that we were working magic together. But I did experience quite a few things in that forest, and so I get your experiences.
It's very interesting to talk to someone who does that. I've never really talked to anyone before who's had any kind of practical experience with it.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really. Yeah, it's funny that in this time you found something that's really meaningful for you. I think we're at a turning point in humanity. That's my feeling with this, where we're going to start learning a lot more about it. Remains to be seen.
Maybe necessary for us, at least.
Yeah, because it's connected with nature.
Yes.
I'll send you a link to a book that I'm just reading at the moment as well. It's called Greening the Paranormal, and it really ties in with this whole experience of this sense of loss with the trees being cut down, and maybe this new evolution that we're going through, that I believe we're about to go through, is this reconnection with nature and the other worlds. And I feel that is what can save our environment, realizing again that we are part of this natural world, which these other worlds are also part of.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I think that's more or less exactly what what also me and my father have been writing on now with this looking at the journals. There's some of it in the main journals where we've written some thoughts. But of course, much more so in the commentaries. So that's definitely resonate with that idea.
Yeah. Oh, it's really great to talk to you, and hopefully we'll get to talk again. Thank you so much for speaking to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
Time to
I think you'll agree that this collection of experiences is quite magnificent. He talks about going out into the forest and finding the whole experience normal at the time. As an 11-year-old, he was still a child, but on the cusp of great change. He had the expectation that he would be able to see the beings of the forest that he'd read about, and he did. And he describes them as being very real, like anything else experienced in life. To me, it just drives home that such experiences are normal. It's our limiting, reductionist Western world view that's not normal. We've separated ourselves from these natural experiences by placing our perspective only on what's physically manifest in this world, compartmentalizing everything else as either psychological, religious experience, which we are loath to offer explanation for, or as something outside the realms of nature, as if we, in our greatness, have already set the rigid limitations of nature. There are, of course, plenty of references to Lord of the Rings, Norse mythology, and Harry Potter, but while some may argue that these visions were simply imagined by the child, later as a young man, he is in no doubt that they were real, and having had these experiences myself, and spoken to many others whose own encounters attest these realities, I would suggest that the folklore and literature he was exposed to made it easier to open up to the possibility, and then provided a language in which to understand them. I love that he found many of the experiences humorous. Life is to be enjoyed. The more laughter, the better. It's good for the soul. I like the description of the fairy spying behind a tree, and when he's spotted, he changes himself into silver leaves. It's so creative and playful, the essence of nature itself. There's the gnome that trips up. It's basic slapstick humour and entertaining for a child, but whereas children view the world with wonder and an openness to encounters, adults may sometimes find these overwhelming. More uncomfortably, our guest describes the fairies pushing their subtle bodies into his mouth and filling up his lungs, which he reports as uncomfortable but not as the kind of horrifying experience which we might expect. If anyone else can relate to these sorts of experiences, please get in touch. We hear through these stories, however, that he's simultaneously able to rationalize it. Like the black dog experience in the previous episode, the child is able to remind himself that they are not perceiving the physical realm. In this way, he's aware that he's experiencing them through a perceptive lens that he can draw away from or to decide not to be frightened, choosing his reality even during the experience. We all have the ability to do this, we just aren't generally taught to use it. Our Western understanding of the imagination is very limited in that we assume what is created there does not really exist in the same way as we perceive the world as physical and real. Yet these beings do exist in a less dense way than we do. We are all energy beings, electromagnetic beings with our force expanding outside the realms of our physical body. Our physical bodies are simply the densest part of our being. Our subtle bodies are of a lighter vibration, for instance our third eye, and are able to sense and perceive these beings, and also we can sense each other. Through our emotional subtle bodies, which is the third densest layer after our physical and our mental bodies, we can often sense how someone is feeling without even engaging with them. We can sit near someone on a train or stand next to them in a queue and very often sense their emotional state. With loved ones, we often sense when we need to contact them. I love that our guest could rely on his mum to interrupt proceedings with a check-in phone call when she instinctively felt it was necessary. Parents and children in particular have this strong connection and sixth sense with each other. The many details which the journals describe, such as that there was no moon visible on the full moon eve, and the strange red light on the first experience of war within the forest, are so precious. Both forest trips and dreams provide symbolic, allegoric, or prophetic insight. Walks and dreams suggested a sense that the forest was due to be destroyed. Did this trigger the fighting? Which came first? I would suggest a further instance of prophecy and symbolism in the book offered from the stag beetle, which had itself transformed from a spider. To me, it seems possible that the book represented the culmination of the B.O.D.A.Vs, the books of dreams and visions. I sense that these works, which will eventually be published, are an important part of who our guest is. I personally feel that they offer something significant to understanding more about ourselves and the other worlds. I feel that at a deep spiritual level he was destined to impart these through the journals. Other adventures included the armed gnomes. They appeared to be protecting the tree, which was of course later cut down, though our guest and his father didn't know that at the time. Did the gnomes know its fate? Did they initially mistake our guest and his father to be the human who would come to cut the tree down? After explaining they meant no harm, the gnomes backed off. The dreams are another fascinating aspect and one which I'd like to look into further. In the dream when he meets the Elf King and his daughter, at one point our guest's eyes become blurry and he can't see properly. In another section it becomes dark and he says, "Oh no, I'm losing my night vision." As we mentioned during the discussion, this appears to tie into his fear of losing the ability to see into the other worlds, perhaps because he is growing up and becoming more socialized, a sense that he cannot remain in these worlds forever. Or is he sensing the impending destruction of the forest that will end these shared encounters? His consciousness is alerting him to this loss through his dreams. A serpent appeared in his dreams and in the forest. From a Jungian dream perspective, snakes offer a possibility to connect with the wisdom of the soul. Carl Jung offers the following. The serpent shows the way to hidden things and expresses the introverting libido which leads man to go beyond the point of safety and beyond the limits of consciousness as expressed by the deep crater. As animal, snake symbolizes something unconscious. It is the instinctive movement or tendency. It shows the way to the hidden treasure, or it guards the treasure. So this, I feel, seems to be talking about the supernatural vision or knowledge that our guest is able to see, to hold that deeper perspective into the other worlds, but is also potentially talking about transformation and the fact that our guest at some point soon is going to grow up, and those fears of whether he will in fact retain the potential to see into these other worlds. If any listeners are knowledgeable in this area, then please do get in touch. I find this really fascinating, and I'll certainly be looking into Jungian dream psychology more. The book I mentioned was Greening the Paranormal by Jack Hunter, a collection of essays on humankind's relationship with Earth and what we've come to term as extraordinary experience. I'd also recommend Patrick Harper's Demonic Reality, which argues that the human psyche extends beyond the confines of the physical human body, and that it may in fact be a part of our reality. My own ideas about this have come from Martin Brofman's book Anything Can Be Healed, which I'd highly recommend. And if you're interested in reading about extraordinary experiences and synchronicities, I'd also recommend Mike Clelland's The Messengers, which I'm finding absolutely fascinating. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Please get in touch. Please tweet me at _remain_curious. Please get in touch at scarletofthefae.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And as always, none of us have the answers, but the important thing is that we are exploring together, sharing these stories, and opening our minds to these possibilities. Above all, always remain curious.